Inkjet Printing Masterclass. These 6 online video presentations are created from our own experiences, dealing with thousands of photographers' printing requirements, and as such are biased according to what we've found to be successful. Don't panic if you miss some of my commentary. I will be covering a lot of ground in this brief presentation. You will find the complete text of this lesson below this video. Why not print it out for your study notes? Many of our customers have asked me to produce this up-to-date guide, so let's get started. Lesson 2. Professional Photo Ink Essentials. I'll quickly take you through the subjects that we will be dealing with in this presentation. In this lesson, I want to show you the difference between inks used in graphic arts and those which are correct for use in professional photography. Print a photograph. How much ink? I want you to know exactly how much ink a photographic inkjet print takes to produce and how to scale this up or down for any size that you're producing. Photo or text. How much ink? I will show you the difference in ink consumption between printing text, which is what inkjet printers were originally created for, and printing a full page coloured photographic print. I think the results will surprise you. OEM branding or third party. We will look at the cost comparisons between OEM brand inks and approved third party professional photographic inks. Often it makes sense to stay with the brand cartridge inks. Handling modern pigment inks. I'll show you how to correctly handle modern pigment inks. Minimum waste equals maximum profit. Maximise your profit by minimising waste. It sounds obvious, but we go into this in a little bit of detail to actually improve your profitability. We look into where waste occurs. And finally, never do this. Just a few points for us to be aware of when working with professional photographic inkjet inks. So let's get started with a lesson. Professional photographic ink essentials, and here we have a comparison between graphics inks and photographic inks. In the world of printing text, graphics, line art, posters, signage, one of the most important visual qualities of the ink is contrast. Sharp, abrupt difference between the colour of the paper and the fully saturated colour of the text, graphics or block colours in the illustrations. We're looking for crisp, sharp edges to the colours, good rich blacks which obliterate completely with a small dot gain and minimal edge bleed. I show here an exaggerated response curve on the left hand side for graphic inks. Now we've actually shown along the baseline here, it shows that we're actually blocking in our shadow detail, and then as we get lighter, you see how abruptly it comes up. And I think I've been a little bit generous here for graphic inks. They're not always as smooth as this. I think I'm being a little bit generous. But certainly a lot of these graphic inks, they exhibit this quality of saturating quite way in and then lifting off, and I have to say that this is usually a little bit rougher than that. So that's a sort of a typical graphic ink, and that's what we're looking for there. Now in my day, creating prints in a professional photographic darkroom, the most important aspect was creating a good rich black which lifted off early and described a smooth curve up to the density or brightness of the paper. When we progressed to colour darkroom printing, we tried to emulate this with colour emulsions in red, green and blue. Modern pigment and dye-based photographic inks share many similarities with cheaper graphics inks, but have complex additives which can give far better graduations and prevent colours and blacks from blocking in, which is oversaturation, which enables great shadow detail and smooth mid-range tonality. I show a typical response curve for a good quality photographic ink in the right hand diagram. A response curve for a traditional darkroom photographic emulsion would be fairly similar. So to show you here, we've actually got let's imagine this is the black channel, and so we'd have a good rich black here, but immediately it starts lifting off to expose your shadow detail, and then it carries on through to a nice smooth curve characteristic. Now imagine we get this in all of our colour channels. That enables us to render a truly photographic inkjet print. Now graphic inks are generally a lot cheaper to buy than photographic inks. Beware of so-called universal printing inks which purport to be able to render good photographic graduated tones. The next part of this lesson shows you how to tell the difference. In my travels, I see a great many so-called photographic inkjet prints which actually are little more than posters. The poor quality inks have squeezed out so much detail. All we're left with are hard, blocked-in shadows with very little tonality and very little information in the image. The lesson here is not to settle for the cheapest inks, either stick to the brand OEM inks or an approved third-party professional photographic ink. So let's look at these two images side by side. On the left-hand side, we can see the shadow detail, and we've got something nasty going on here on the side here. We've clearly got something that is not photographic. We've also got a very rough tone in the mid-range, and the highlights seem to be blown out. This is a typical example of an attempt for a graphic inks to actually render a photographic image. Now on the right hand side we have the same image, but this time it's printed using a correct photographic ink, and we've got correct shadow detail. We've then got a nice smooth graduation, so we've got a good graduated tone in the shadows here, and the mid-tones are handled correctly, and the highlights are nice and smooth as well. Overall, we have an accurate pale flesh tone. On the other side here, you can see the comparison. Now this image is one of our most critical images that you'll see on our standard master image, which you're able to download from us free of charge straight from your either our Marriott website or our Marriott USA website, and you're able to compare and see what sort of ink you're actually working with. Now, how can we tell whether the inks that we're using right now are of photographic quality or graphics quality? Now we have this standard image. The standard image that we use to see whether we're printing correctly. Now you can download this image from either, for those in the UK and Europe, you would download this image from www.marriott.com/print, and for those in the US or the Canadian market, you would download it from www.marriottusa.com/print. The idea is that you'd print out this image and you can evaluate the print. Now you can get us to send you the correct printed version of this image by simply emailing us in and giving us your postal address, and we will send you free of charge a full page correctly printed certified accurate print of this image. So you can print this out yourself and you can actually see which the quality of your printing. Now I'll actually criticise this image. On the left here we don't appear to be achieving a good rich black. we appear to be achieving a bit of a milky black here. Whereas on the right hand side, we've got a good rich black, and we'll see this in the print. Hopefully you're seeing this in your video presentation. But this print to me looks like a milky black, and this panel here is a good rich black. Now the next item that we need to look at, of course, is the primary colours. Now the primary colour graduations that we see here in the good print, we have red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, yellow and black. And we have a smooth graduation to see whether we're getting that lovely smooth curve that we expect to achieve. A lot of these sample prints that you see out there that you can get on the internet don't give you these smooth graduations. They actually give you a thing called a step wedge, which are not really graduations, they're steps of density. Well, for photography, that's no good to us. We're looking for smooth graduations, and that's the essential difference between photography and graphics. Now here we've got smooth graduations. On this side, hopefully you'll be able to see, we've actually got some lumps and bumps going on here, and this actually shows us that we should be looking out for problems in our actual image. And sure enough, there they are. We've got in our pale flesh tone, which is the most critical part of our image, in our pale flesh tone we've got uneven tones, we've got a nasty aberration in the shadow detail. It just isn't a good image. And in our correct print, there we have the little baby, the little baby is presented correctly. Once we've got all this going on, everything else tends to fall into line. But the most important thing in my book is a good rich black, good healthy saturated colours that graduate smoothly up to the colour of the paper, the white colour of the paper. That's something we'll cover in the next lesson. And then the proof of the pudding, in my book, is a pale flesh tone. We can actually go back one and we can actually see the enlarged version of that particular section of the image. So let's go forward again. I've been sent, let's have a look, where are we? Yes, check that the tones throughout the calibration images are smooth and realistic. This is what it's all about. We have to be able to reproduce true photographic tones. Now, I've been sent many versions of this image in my time, printed out using various qualities of inkjet ink. Those from OEM brand inks are generally fine. Usually we can raise the quality up by our free high-end custom profiling to achieve great professional photographic standards. In the case of our own Marit inkjet paper, simply buying one box enables you to claim your free custom printer profile no matter what ink you use, and we check you every 6 months. The same applies to the good quality third-party inks out there. Professional standards are achievable with custom profiling with great savings. There are some very cheap inks out there which simply do not respond to printer profiling. If an ink will only create a milky black, for instance, in many cases you're stuck with this appearance even after custom profiling. We will be coming back to this calibration image when we explore photo inkjet paper essentials, and also when we look at colour management and process control. Inkjet ink consumption. A few years ago, we rigged up an Epson R2400 to a precision digital weighing scale. We printed 50 A4 borderless multicoloured photographs onto a glossy photo inkjet paper. We deducted the finishing ink weight from the starting ink weight and found that we were using almost exactly 1 millilitre of ink for every A4 page printed. Since that time, we've often repeated this observation using various printers, inks and papers, and rarely see any great variation from an initial result. Therefore, until we're told differently, our findings are that if you cover an entire page with a photographic image, that means no large areas of white uninked paper, you will use 1 milliliter to cover an A4 or a US letter 11 inch by 8.5 inch. You'll use 2 milliliters to cover an A3 or a US 11 inch by 17 inch, and 4 milliliters to cover an A2 or a US 17 inch by 22 inch. To scale up or down, calculate the milliliters per square inch, then do the maths for the area of your particular print. If you're in the US, then convert your milliliters to ounces in the usual way. Now, don't fall into the trap of thinking that if you've bought an OEM brand cartridge that contains, say, 25 millilitres of ink, that you'll be able to use all of that ink. Older ink cartridge chips are programmed to show an out of ink message well before the cartridge actually empties. The latest ink cartridges even have an internal contact system which actually detects when the ink level drops below a certain level. Certainly not completely exhausted. So we see on the picture here, we've actually taken the chip away from the cartridge, and this is a modern cartridge from the R3000, incidentally, the desktop, the Epson R3000, very popular photographic printer. So we've unclipped the chip, and we see that the chip, it actually makes contact with these two little contacts here, and you've got two sensors that run inside the cartridge to make sure that when the ink level goes down, the chip then gives the information to the printer to stop printing, because Epson, quite rightly, they don't want the printer running out of ink, which could cause damage. Now, this is a sensible precaution against running the print head dry, but it's worth knowing that if you're not using all the ink that you have paid for, it's not a bad idea to weigh a brand new OEM cartridge, then weigh it again when the printer says it must be changed, then weigh it yet again after you've taken out every last drop of ink with something like a syringe. It seems a crying shame that you cannot use every last drop of brand ink, especially when you consider that some desktop brand inks work out at around £1,000 per litre. Modern Inkjet ink represents some of the most expensive liquids commercially available. Just imagine buying a litre of fine wine for £1,000 or $1,600. Well, I wouldn't. Now, text versus photograph. How much ink do we use in either case? I've always wondered how many A4 or US letter full page text pages I could print for an equivalent amount of ink used to print photographic inkjet coloured prints. Well, just for the purposes of this lesson, these are our findings. The amount of ink we used to print 5 A4 coloured photographs or 5 US letter, standard letter photographs was almost exactly 5 millilitres, agreeing with the consumption figure that I mentioned earlier. Printing a typical text page, in this case an invoice full of text with a logo on top, we used 5 millilitres to print 200 pages. For every A4 photograph, I could print 40 pages of text. For our American friends, you can use the same figures. For your 11.5 by 8 inch standard letter size, you can print either one colour photograph or 40 pages of text. It's interesting to note that the economics of early inkjet printing around 1984 appear to be based on the assumption that most users would be printing text, and cartridge prices were set accordingly. When it transpired that photographers were able to produce very acceptable photographic prints by covering the entire page with a sheet of ink. With the exception of the white areas, of course, inkjet printers do not use white ink. Very little changed in pricing to make photographic inkjet printing competitive with equivalent photolab printing prices. It became a dominant printing method not because of any economic advantage, more through sheer convenience of printing in-house or in the home. Even now, you can get a quality photographic machine print from a photo lab for a fraction of the price of an inkjet print. But in spite of this, there are far fewer photographic laboratories around than in the 1980s.